Hello and welcome to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging field of data science. We bring the best minds in data, software engineering, machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now here are your hosts, Frank Lavinia and Andy Leonard.
Hello and welcome back to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging fields of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. If you like to think of data as the new oil, then you can consider us Car Talk, because we focus on where the rubber meets the road. And on with me on this epic road trip down the information superhighway, as he has been from day one, season 1, episode 1, episode 0. Actually, we started at 0.
I think you're right.
With me is Andy Leonard, who has gone from data engineer to chief data engineer to, you had another really, data philosopher. That's what it was.
Yeah, I started with data philosopher back in the day.
Right. Which is very cool,
Yeah.
by the way.
Well, I appreciate that, Frank. It kind of went with the beard. And, back then I had the unbraided version of the beard. And so I still call myself.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I still call myself a data philosopher at DILM Suite, which is kind of like an offshoot of Aetna, the consulting company.
Cool.
So, yeah, I kept the title.
Awesome. Enterprise DNA, for those not in the know, not Aetna, like Dame Edna. I don't know.
Thanks. Yes, not the insurance company, but Enterprise Data and Analytics. And, yep, I work there. Frank works at Microsoft.
Yep, which wasn't the case during the whole podcast journey, actually. I had been riffed from Microsoft because they basically said move to Seattle or else. And I rejoined about 18 months ago.
Awesome. Has it been that long? Wow.
It really has, yeah. I mean, April, so.
Yeah, well, still, 15 months.
15 months, yeah. It was 18 months since the job opportunity was first presented to me.
Right, right.
So it's been an interesting journey. I'm now, they changed our titles for this upcoming fiscal year. Microsoft fiscal year goes from July 1st to June 30th. I am now a cloud solution architect.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I like that title better, because it's easier to explain to parties. Like cloud solution architect. Oh, okay. It's cloud. It's architect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Whereas before I was a technology solutions professional, which requires a bit of a follow-up sentence or two.
Well, it's vague.
Yeah, it is vague.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have something that is, it's funny because throughout my tenure at Microsoft, I've always had those kind of weird, hard to explain titles, like evangelist.
Yes.
Right?
You're right.
Which,
right.
Folks like you and me, and I gather 99% of our listeners, we know what an evangelist is.
Right, right.
But to normal people, they don't necessarily. They're like, what? Like a televangelist?
Right, like religious. Yeah, religious.
Right. It's not quite like that. So.
Well, you weren't.
Although some would argue, maybe it is.
Well, I know you've always had a passion for community. For those who don't know that, I don't know that we've ever told the backstory, Frank.
What's the backstory?
You and I, when we first met, it was November of 2005. I know that, and I remember that because the Richmond .NET users group was just getting going or getting re-going. I'm not sure.
We kind of. So when I moved to Richmond from New Jersey, I had wanted to restart the group.
Yeah.
And by the time November happened, we had a pretty good momentum going on. And I think you were there when we were at our temporary location. And we ended up taking up 2 conference rooms, which was about twice the size of the group that we expected.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was talking about starting up a Richmond SQL group. And
I remember.
Andrew Duthie, who was the developer evangelist for the area at the time, suggested I meet you.
Very cool.
So, and I think I told you, just send them on by. I'll be here. So.
And he did, and I popped in, And gosh, I'm trying to remember the guy's name it was speaking. I think it was from New Jersey. I want to say
Miguel Castro.
it was Miguel. Yes.
Yep. We had him come down.
Yeah, that was a fantastic presentation. I had no idea who he was at the time. But
he is an awesome presenter.
He really is, and very smart guy. Very impressive, just all around. And we also, I distinctly remember meeting Nick Harris at that meeting as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So we were all kind of newish to the Richmond area. I was born in Richmond, but I had lived in Jacksonville, Florida for the previous 3.5 years. And I'd gotten into community down there. I really didn't, know much about the technical community, although I lived in the area, in the Richmond metropolitan area, before I moved down to Florida. But it was very interesting. And, I kind of caught the bug. And I think you and I were both at a spot in our lives where we had a little bit of extra time, and we were both very passionate about this whole idea of community. So we dove in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned Miguel, because Miguel and Don Demsack, I think at the time he was known as Don XML, were the guys that got me interested in community when I lived in New Jersey.
Cool. That is so cool.
So, which actually I think leads us to kind of our next topic, one of our themes, if you will, for the year. Because now that we're 3 seasons in, 2.5 years, maybe?
Yeah. Yep.
And this season was a bit delayed, but it's not been delayed as long as a Rick and Morty season. So count your blessings. Setting that bar low. I love Rick and Morty. So, much love to Harmon and I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, So one of the themes I think we want to kick off on is 2 themes. One is inspiration, like what inspired us, like what inspired us to get into data, what can we do to inspire others, to kind of pay it forward, like what inspired us to get into this, what inspired us to stay in this, and how can we pass that on to our listeners. I think that's what gets us up in a day and keeps us up late at night. And
absolutely. And then the other side of that, the other topic that I think bleeds into it is, and kind of takes into account our profession, is tech intensity.
Right. And tech intensity is one of those newfangled terms that if you watch the Inspire keynote last week, and internally we've been using that a lot, tech intensity, which is basically helping spread the knowledge of technology to more people, like basically turning up our technology skills, just turning it up a notch, as well as sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what you did when you were an evangelist, Frank. And I think both you and I have been classified as technology evangelists at different points in our career by different people. But the idea is we're excited about technology. We like what we're seeing. Maybe we have passions that go in the other direction emotionally. Maybe we don't like these other things that we're seeing. But whatever it is that we're passionate about, positively or negatively, we share that.
Exactly.
We just do.
Exactly. And it's kind of like a correlation measurement, right? Like if it's the closer it is to 0, there's no correlation. But the closer it is to -1 or +1, there's either a negative correlation or a positive correlation. How's that for geeking out?
I like that. That's got data science written all over it,
doesn't
Frank.
it? It's almost like it's a podcast about data science.
We should do one.
We should do one. So I think really the key here is, and what's really cool is, over the past 6 months, we both have had challenges, in terms of deaths in the family. My wife was hospitalized. Yes. She's okay now. Yep. That's really what kind of has delayed the season from coming out. But also as part of that, I've managed to, as part of my job, is go and go through and actually have people come up to me when I'm presenting at a customer site, like, oh yeah, I love your show, like tell Andy I said hi. And It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that happens to me when I
it's
present
cool.
too.
It's like,
Yeah,
wow,
it's
like,
awesome.
it's not just my mom listening, and it's not just like AI bots that I programmed. No, I don't actually have that, but like it's actually something like people are listening to, and we appreciate that. We really appreciate
That
that.
is so true. Well, and I'll say, because now I know, Frank, you set all of this up, so I'm not stealing anybody's thunder here. Frank did all the work. Once again, Frank did all the work. But we have, for season 3, for this kickoff, we have a really cool guest. All of our guests have been cool. I've said this before. They're awesome. But this guest is a little higher visibility in some circles that maybe not our other guests have been as high visibility in. And that's the big tease I'm going to do, Frank. I'm going to let you take it from there.
In light of this inspiration theme, I want to share with you all, with our listeners, the guy who inspired me to podcast. His name is John Lee Dumas. He runs a podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. It's an award-winning podcast where he interviews inspiring entrepreneurs who are, in his words, on fire. And he has over 2,000 episodes. If anyone posts more content on the internet than me, it's probably him. 1 million plus listeners a month, 7 figures from his podcast of annual revenue.
Wow.
He's known to his fans as just JLD. And he's just getting started. He's doing a lot of great stuff. He's actually been in 2 movies, documentaries, not like Avengers or anything like that. But that is 2 more documentaries than I've been in. So, much props to him. And he's been a continual source of inspiration. You can, I better shut off my Alexa, because as soon as I start talking about her, she will start playing it. But he actually has a flash briefing on Amazon Alexa. So if you want to do it, you could just ask her to play, Entrepreneur on Fire.
Right.
He is a genius. He is a veteran. He served our country in Iraq. He is awesome because he's just very inspirational. He has a program called Podcasters Paradise, which, we've kind of talked about a lot in terms of the training that I did. We always mention the training that Frank did.
Absolutely.
To kind of help get the podcast going.
Yeah, this guy sounds pretty cool. Who are we talking about?
Awesome. Oh, it's some guy named John Lee Dumas. Although Alexa always puts on like a little bit of a French twist on it, like John Lee Dumas.
That is the roots. That's where
where the
fam comes from.
Wow. Awesome. Another French Canadian on the call.
Yes.
Danger, Andy.
I'm outnumbered. It's all good.
Awesome.
It's all good. Welcome, Mr. Dumas.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you two for a little while.
So welcome to the show. For those that don't know, we just mentioned that you were in two documentaries, one of which I just got the email about today. Did you want to talk about that?
Age of the Entrepreneur. It was a documentary that features 24 pretty successful entrepreneurs. And I mean, this team put in the work. I mean, they actually flew down to Puerto Rico with a full team, with a full video crew. We recorded all day. I mean, it was a definite production. It was a couple of years ago, the filming. I mean, this takes a long time for these higher production movies to kind of obviously make the progress from conception to reality. And it was really cool to see it come out and to sit down and to watch it and to see people like Les Brown, Russell Brunson, T. Harv Eker, Jenna Kutcher, and just a ton of other successful entrepreneurs be a part of it. And I think it's really going to move the needle for some people.
Awesome. I was excited just watching the trailer.
Cool. Well, I can drop a quick link for people.
That'd be awesome.
Because it's still free to watch. It won't be forever, but eofire.com/video. You can go watch the whole movie for free.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put that in the show notes. And the next item was, you were also, I think it was the Think and Grow Rich documentary.
Yes, that also was a super highly produced movie. That was actually the highest produced I've ever been. I mean, they brought in real characters, real scenes were shot. You know, they would go back in time and I mean, that was some cinematography at its
I was
height.
impressed. And I just remember I was watching it because I think it was on like Amazon Prime or something like that. And I'm watching it and I'm like, and you show up. I'm like, holy crap. Like, holy crap. I kind of know that guy, sort of.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
We've listened to him.
One of the things that I think really you inspired was you talk a lot about this in a number of places about what got you into podcasting. Did you want to share kind of a 2-minute version of that?
Well, what got me into podcasting, honestly, in a sense, was the book Think and Grow Rich. So that was why it was very fitting to be part of that movie, because I can remember so clearly being a little lost, like in my late 20s, having been an officer in the U.S. Army and being very proud of that, and that being a very solid part of my life. But then after that, struggling and finding my footing with law school and corporate finance and commercial real estate. And I remember just literally going to Google and typing in best business books of all time. And right near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list, was Think and Grow Rich. And so I ordered that one and a handful of other ones. And I mean, this is way pre-Kindle. So I mean, like, I literally ordered the physical books. They show up and I just remember reading them. And then the book Think and Grow Rich really stuck with me because of the concept of masterminds, which I'd never really heard of before, and just the struggles that Napoleon Hill went through interviewing all of these people, but the inspiration and knowledge that came from those interviews and all of that stuff was just really cool and really inspiring to me. And that book was kind of a domino that it's like, man, these books are actually kind of cool. So I then read another one and another one and another one. And then I'm like, I'm actually in the car a lot. Why am I listening to Miley Cyrus every third song on the radio? How about I actually turn my car into Automobile University, which I did. And so now I'm buying audiobooks, but I'm not rich at this point in my life. So I was like, I wonder if there's a cheaper way instead of paying $17 for every audiobook. And that's what led me to learn about podcasting and just fall in love with the medium of podcasting, free, on demand, targeted content. And I was just like, I get it. How is this not more of a thing? Like, why are so many people wasting this incredibly valuable time that they're at the gym listening to, Achy Breaky Heart for the 50th time? Like, why not actually be learning some inspirational, motivational, tactical stuff while you're at the gym, in your car, walking your dog, folding your laundry, washing your dishes? It just made so much sense to me. It was almost just like The King with No Clothes or whatever that fable was. I was like, how is not everybody seeing this right now? I don't get it. It's like, literally, this king is naked right now. Because to me, the opportunity was just so obvious. And I said, I got to get into this. And that's when I'm like, what is needed? Because I'm not going to just launch a podcast like everybody else, because I'm not going to be good at podcasting. So I need a tactical edge. I said, well, how do you get good at something? Oh, you actually do the thing. And that's when I was like, I got to do it every single day. Everybody's like, no. That's not how podcasting's done. You'll get burned out. Nobody will listen to it daily. I'm like, I don't care if nobody listens to it daily. I need to do it daily if I'm going to ever get good at this thing. I'm not going to get good at something I do once a week. And so that's when the daily podcast was launched back in 2012. And now you and I are chatting, or the three of us are chatting 7 years later, 2,200 episodes later, $16 million in revenue later.
Wow.
And it was a pretty good aha moment.
So talk about inspiring. Sorry, Andy, I cut you off.
Well, really, no, that's okay. I wanted to thank you for your service. I appreciate that. I was in the Virginia Army National Guard for 6 years. Nothing like what you did, but thank you.
Well, I appreciate the appreciation, and I'm a big believer that we're all a cog on the bigger team. So I think anybody who serves deserves a lot of credit.
Same here. I can't tell you how inspiring the shows that I've listened to. I haven't listened to all 2,200 of them.
What? I'm out of here.
But I'm going to get right on that. I'm going to get right on it just as soon as we get done. But one of the things that struck me early on when I first found eofire.com was the posting of the revenue. So you've got in the corner of the site, I've got it up right now, and you've got the June 2019 income. We're recording this just July 22nd, 2019. And here you've got a report on your income. And two things. One is the transparency. And I think the bigger piece is that you're obviously practicing what you preach, and there's a number to prove it.
Absolutely. And honestly, that goes back to like 2011, 2012, when I was trying to come up with an idea, like what can I do in the online world that's going to give me location freedom, lifestyle freedom, and hopefully financial freedom. And I wasn't really sold on it. I was an Army officer for 8 years. I was really big into that. And then I was, thinking about law school, which I went to and dropped out after a semester, and then corporate finance, commercial real estate. I was like very traditional in my path just because my eyes hadn't been open. I hadn't been really exposed to really successful entrepreneurs that were living these amazing lives. And I kind of had this wrong feeling, but it was a feeling that, if you were going to make money online, you were kind of slimy, you were kind of scammy, just because I didn't know any better. I was clueless. And right. I stumbled across this guy, Pat Flynn, smartpassiveincome.com, and he had been publishing an income report for a couple of years at that point. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? If I ever find my thing and start making money, I am going to be as transparent and authentic as this guy. Because here's a guy who's a good guy, family dude, making really good money. He's making like 20 or 30K a month at that point, which to me was like to the moon and back. And it is. I mean, there's a ton of money. Oh, yeah. And I was just like, whew, this guy's proving to me that you can do it the right way. And that was what I was all about, coming from the credo of being an officer in the U.S. Army, serving during a time of war, 13-month tour of duty in Iraq. I mean, I wanted to do it the right way. And he showed me it was possible. And so when I hit my first $100,000 month, I said, you know what? It's time to start being really transparent, to show people how we're making our money, the successes we're having so they can be emulated, the failures we're having so they can be avoided. And let's bring my CPA on, my accountant, to first off, validate what we're doing, because anybody can just write anything on the internet. So let's bring on somebody who, is a professional and has a legal obligation, to validate this and to make it to show that this is reality. And then also let's bring on my lawyer, because I have a lawyer as well. And my accountant can give a tax tip. My lawyer can give a legal tip, and just give a lot more credibility to this whole thing. So people know that this is coming from a place of transparency, authenticity, and genuineness. And so that was 71 months ago, and we haven't missed a month since.
Wow. And I think another thing that I'm glad you mentioned the financial reports, because one of the things that I was impressed with, and I think I asked you this last week when we did kind of another call, kind of sort of related to this, was since our show is about data and analytics, and you are the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, how impactful are analytics and data to someone in your position?
It's everything. I'll butcher it just a little bit, but there's a Peter Drucker quote, which essentially is, what gets measured gets improved. And like, if you're not measuring things, you're not going to improve those things. If you're not studying your analytics, if you're not studying the ROI, the return on investment for what you're doing, if you're not looking at the numbers and tweaking and optimizing and testing and all of that, like, you're not going to be running as successful of a business as you could be, period, end of story. And so that's why I wanted to be super accountable and know my numbers and know where the money was coming in, where the money was going out, any leaky holes in the ship, where to patch them, which things were really working, by the way. Let's amplify those things. A lot of people don't even know like what's really working best in their business because they don't know their numbers. I know my numbers inside and out because we do a full income report every single month. And if you're not doing that, at least privately, there's no reason you have to be public about these numbers. If you're not doing them privately, you're leaving a lot on the table, and you're potentially setting yourself up for failure.
That is well said. And I think there's a lot of folks who are CXOs of companies that, I interact with as part of my day job that just don't quite get it, how important data is. And it's not just a nerd thing, it's a business thing. So JLD, where can people find out more about what you're doing and stuff like that?
All the magic for us happens at eofire.com. You go there, you'll be able to see those income reports that you mentioned earlier. You know, we have 71 of those that are just full of all the things that are working for us. I mean, you know, podcasting is big for us, but we do a lot of things besides podcasting. We have courses, we have physical products, we have affiliate revenue. So we do a lot of different things. So no matter where you are in your journey or what industry you're in, you can learn a lot from those income reports. It's also a place where we have a ton of free courses on how to start a podcast, how to create a funnel, how to create your own mastermind. They're all free. They're super well done, very valuable. Go check out those free courses at eofire.com. And of course, I'd love for anybody that doesn't already to check out and listen to my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire.
And it truly is on fire. Thank you, JLD. We know you have a limited time frame here, so want to thank you for being on the show, and catch you on the flip side. Isn't that what you say at the end of your show?
That's it. Thanks for listening, and thanks for having me on.
Anytime, man. All right. So that was awesome. We really appreciate JLD for taking time out of his busy schedule. We did have a very limited sort of window of his time. So it also, I don't think, made sense to ask him our usual round of questions.
No, not him.
But I was glad we were able to kind of pull it back and talk about analytics and things like that. I mean,
sure.
there are C-level folks that just don't think that I've met with in the last year or so that just like, yeah, data is not really part of our business plan. I'm thinking,
yes, it is.
No, it's either part of your business plan or you're part of your going out of business plan. I mean, that's
Ow.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty much how it goes. I mean, if you look at, you know, one of the interesting things that JLD did bring up was that Think and Grow Rich book. And I have to confess, I have read some of it. I haven't read it all. I probably should, because I actually have it on Audible too.
Oh, cool.
I had the 21 CD unabridged version, but I lost some of the CDs and stuff, you know.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, that's why I love Audible, because it's hard to lose that.
Very difficult. Yes, sir.
I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure I'll figure it out. But
if you apply yourself, right?
See, inspiration right there. If you apply yourself, anything's possible.
That's true.
But yeah, so that book keeps coming up again and again. I think there was an interview, I think, with Aerosmith, and when they kind of were all just starting the whole world kind of collapsed because of all the drugs and rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
They somehow, I think it might have been Steven Tyler, got a hold of a book copy of that and got one for all the band, and they kind of rebuilt their careers.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah. I know someone's going to say, well, they didn't really rebuild their careers, but I mean, got their lives together.
Well, yeah. Okay.
So with that, we do have a big announcement. And
what's the big announcement,
We
Frank?
are hosting a data summit. So hearkening back to our early days from about 13 years ago, when you and I kind of spearheaded the push to have a code camp in Richmond. We are going to spearhead kind of a new movement towards basically making these types of events accessible to anyone in the world, really. We're going to have a virtual summit, and we are calling it Data Soup Virtual Summit. So if you go to datasoupsummit.com, you'll be able to go and see the wonderful speakers we have lined up. And you're probably thinking like, hey, why are you calling it Data Soup? Especially having something called soup when it's hotter than Hades on the East Coast for sure, and summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, part of that is that the old expression, soup to nuts, right? Because a lot of the demos that we see, kind of at these conferences, stuff like that, they are kind of idealized concepts, right? Like, they don't really show you how to do something soup to nuts, right? So for this one, which we hope to have this is first in a series of events. I let that cat out of the bag. But why not? You're our loyal listeners. Is that this one is going to be focused on kind of like data integration, data engineering, data science, AI, visualization, soup to nuts, right? The entire data science process. from getting data, loading data, doing something with the data, building a model, and even building out something Power BI.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool because the people we've got lined up. Can we talk some about the people? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the ones that have filled out their profile on the site, which hopefully will be everyone by the time this launches. But Andy and I will be speaking. We'll kind of be more like the MCs. We're not really going to be stars of the show. But we do have, speaking of making it accessible, why don't you talk to us about someone who's really good at Power BI?
Oh, wow. So Razor Rad. And if you don't know who Razor Rad is, I'm going to guess that you don't search for answers on forums or at your favorite search engine for Power BI. His answers are going to be in the top. Razor literally wrote the book on Power BI architecture that was released earlier this year. And he's one of the best known names. He lives in New Zealand. And what's nice about the way Frank came up with the idea to structure this conference is we're actually having them record very close to the conference their sessions. And that gives them an opportunity to edit and make it just as tight as they possibly can and not have to pay a few $1,000s to fly here and back to New Zealand.
Right. And, that's kind of the key is that I think a lot of this is about accessibility in terms of, you get all the benefits of a conference. Because Andy and I have been talking about doing live events since the Richmond Code Camp days.
Yes.
For paid live events since the Richmond Code Camp days. But for one reason or the other, it's one of those things where we have to devote a lot of time to.
Right.
Whereas with the virtual summit, we can just do what we're really good at, lining up talent, lining up guests, and kind of even some video magic and things like that. Which if you've been watching my LinkedIn feed, it's been on fire lately. Mostly promoting season 3, and you can bet there's going to be some soup-related stuff coming down the pike soon. But really, the key here is that no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to join.
Right.
And we do have a base. It is for pay. It's $24.97, I think, is what we set as our price.
Yep.
But for data-driven listeners, if you use the coupon code DATA-DRIVEN, we will give. What do you think, Andy? What do you think the discount should be for data-driven listeners?
Frank, I'd say. These people are faithful. They've been with us for all the way through the first couple seasons into season 3. What do you think? Half off? What do you think?
You know what? I don't think that's good enough. I think 70% off.
Frank loves you more than me. What can I say? 20% more. You have numbers.
Well, it is about data. So we're, for a limited time, if you sign up, definitely during the month of basically, why don't we say up until August 15th, it'll be 70% off.
That makes sense. I like it. Yeah, sounds good.
Beyond that, we'll make it, we'll go down to 50%.
That sounds fair.
But you have access to great talent. I mean, we only talk about Reza. We have Nick Harris. Yeah. Both Nick and Reza have been guests on the show, so you can go back and check out their shows. We also have someone who's not yet been on a formal show, but she was on a data point. Catherine Wilhelmsen. I'm sorry for butchering.
Yes, Wilhelmsen. Yes.
Good. I got her name right. She's going to be talking about Azure Data Factory, the what, the when, and the where, and the why. Because Data Factory is one of those things where I used to joke, I called it sassafras, right? SSIS as a service.
Yes.
But I am seeing a lot more customers, like from the Microsoft point of view, come in and say, hey, what's this ADF stuff about? So we're going to have that. We are also going to have someone else who's been not only a guest on these data points that we've had, but has been a roving reporter, Tim McAlilly. He'll be presenting, although his session is, as of yet, I think not formally announced in terms of what the topic is, but it's probably going to be about data warehouse.
Yep, Tim's awesome at data warehousing, and we also have Dr. Leila Atati, also from New Zealand, who is presenting on AI. And I don't know if you recognize that. Our listeners are savvy and they keep up. If you've been paying attention to some of the conferences that are going on around the globe, a lot of these names are popping up there. So, Dr. Atati is one, Reza and they just travel all over the place, although they live in New Zealand. And my friend and brother from another mother, Nick Harris, is going to open the keynote. I can share a couple of things about Nick. I don't think he would mind. One of them is he's been on the cutting edge of business leadership with technology. He's one of those people who can do both, and I'm always jealous of them because I do the technology okay and the business so. So, but Nick has really been good at both of these things. He's been he's a former CIO, and he recently was accepted into the Sloan MBA program at MIT. So he's actually starting probably about the time we air his keynote. He's going to be jumping into that. So he's not any kind of slouch when it comes to either business or technology. And really excited to have him opening with the opening keynote.
Right. And I think if you look at our speakers, and if you go to datasoupsummit.com, as we're recording this, I would say 80% of it is kind of up, and the agenda is up. We are working with the extra 20% of the agenda, which is kind of mentally how I got that extra 20% discount for y'all that sign up before we kind of have the paint dry. But JLD has inspired me to move forward and move forward with transparency. And we wanted to have a conference that kind of covered the entire swath of data science and data engineering, not just from here are the bits, here's what you do, but kind of from the business point of view, why do this? I mean, in 2019, it's kind of absurd, maybe bordering on surrealism, that you would have any C-level person in any company say that data is not important part of our business.
Oh yeah.
And I think part of that might be just intimidation, because I think one of the things that is a blocker for learning for a lot of folks or doing anything is just the vulnerability. You have to put yourself out there to either internally or externally say, I don't know.
Right.
And I talk to a lot of folks that want to get into data science or AI, and they just kind of say, they immediately a guard kind of comes up because they're used to being the top dog of C# or C++ or Java. And then they realize that they have to, everybody's a noob. Everybody's always a noob at some point.
Sure.
But, with this field, if you have 5 years experience doing AI, that is a very small crowd.
Right.
So I think, getting back to inspiration and tech intensity and how those two relate together, I think I see it, back to, my Blues Brothers moment. I'm on a mission to inspire folks to get, into the technical aspect of it. And no matter where they are, there's plenty of materials with that. And speaking of which, right, if Andy's webinars and training that he makes available isn't enough for you, right? Doesn't cover kind of the basics of stats and things like that. We have, guess what, Andy?
What do we have?
We have our first sponsor.
No way.
Way. So they originally came to me and said, hey, we want to sponsor the podcast and sponsor, the blog. And I'm like, tell you what, I'll do one, because you hit me at a good day. I had a good cup of coffee that day. They are actually also going to be sponsors for the Data Soup Summit. It's 365 Data Science. Awesome. And we will make sure we have the link in the description. And in terms of, if you use that link, they know that we sent you.
Right.
I'll also see about getting a discount there too. But since I don't control what the discount is, I'll have to check my notes and see if I can get them a better discount, get you all a better discount, because you've been an awesome listeners. Listening for Andy and I prattle on for 2.5 going on 3 years.
Yeah, this is so exciting, Frank, because it's a culmination of a lot of hard work and months of dreaming before that.
Right.
When you and I first started talking about this, and I want to say, gosh, I know it was in the fall. We're coming up on 3 years ago when we actually started talking about doing this podcast. And one of the things we wanted to do and we started focusing on at the end of season 1, although it wasn't public, you and I were talking behind the scenes about, okay, can we land someone on the show who has more recognition, who can help us?
Right.
Right? Right. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to tell the story. I'm just going to say our first attempt, we failed.
We didn't just fail, dude. We failed spectacularly.
Well, okay. That's right. Well, we did. We really did. And I'll let people in. So if you've been following us on Twitter and Facebook, every now and then you'll hear Frank or I mention, just as a byline, we'll say something about getting blocked on Twitter or not getting blocked on Twitter.
Yeah,
that's related.
I think we also mentioned it prominently when we had Milena on the show because she's somebody I knew from kind of the DC Tech crowd and mostly on Twitter. So I invited her on the show, even though technically she's not quite data science, but what she does is very relevant to everyday life, but also kind of AI and stuff. But you know, and then I said, I found her on Twitter, and she's like, and Andy's like, and she didn't block you.
So that's the as much of the backstory as we're going to reveal today. That's how that went. But through hard work, persistence, Frank was able to make a connection with John Lee Dumas and Mr. JLD himself, and I thought that was a spectacular segment that we had with him.
It really was, because I wanted to kind of get back to kind of like the core of what data-driven is, because it's changed over time, and part of it was, I mean, we do meander, right? Like,
no,
it's what we do, but I think the key is coming back to what was the core of it, what really inspired it, and a lot of the inspiration that I took was from listening to the Grant Cardone audiobooks. And listening to the EO Fire podcast at a time when, it was made pretty clear to me that I was going to get laid off, ultimately. And kind of like I accidentally stumbled upon that. And I mean, and you want to talk about a content machine. I mean, the first 2,000 episodes he recorded 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, and the whole idea of people have is like, I can't do it. I don't have time or this, whatever. I mean, if he can do it 7 days a week, it's possible to do something once a week. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
absolutely.
It's not a stretch, and not to go down a rabbit hole of Gary Vaynerchuk's theory of time, which is another guy that's a pretty interesting guy.
Yes, also inspirational.
Is that idea of totally blanked out. No, it's the idea that everybody has the same number of hours a day. It's just a question of how you spend that time. And
absolutely.
That is and then that's something I really took to heart starting in I guess it would have been 2016. So here I am, 40 some odd, pushing 50 some odd certifications later, and I have during that period of time, I either had a job or didn't, depending on when you come back. But I've always had the kids, I've always had the dogs, I've always had the wife, the house, and things like that. Like, it is possible. You just have to kind of find your way to make it happen.
Absolutely, yeah. And part of this is having people that we're that inspire us. And we mentioned this. I don't think we mentioned it on the air, but maybe we did at the very beginning of the last show. Or the last segment we recorded, rather, is that now you and I have both had this experience multiple times where people come up to us when they see us at a conference or at an event, and they say, hey, the data-driven guy, and then depending on which one of us they're talking to, they'll say hi to, Frank or Andy for me. And it just boggles my mind. And we look at the download numbers. I'm still... Frank, we cracked 1,000. Not only that, we cracked 80,000.
Right, I know, and it's like I think as of this morning, we're just over 87,000. And I still remember the day we cracked 9,000, and I'm doing a whole run around, doing a whole Dragon Ball Z thing, going over 9,000. Might be on the Facebook page. I'm not sure if I lost what's going.
We need to highlight that video.
There you go. And speaking of Facebook, so we do a lot of these data points, which are recorded live totally unscripted. Those things are unscripted. And then what you hear on the podcast feed is an edited down version of that. But if you ever want to see the thing, bloopers and all,
Right.
they're on our Facebook page. So that alone, I think, just the comedic value sometimes of that is worth it.
I still love.
Donuts
Which
one,
was
yeah,
it at the Dunkin' Donuts? Where you had your kids with you? That's classic.
So if you don't know the whole background story, but the idea for Data Driven, the name came from I was at a Dunkin' Donuts, and I kind of had this idea of DD. I saw DD on the door, which unfortunately they've changed the door handle since then.
Darn it!
But so I wanted to record because it was some milestone, might have been a 9,000 milestone, but I had my kids with me, and bribing them with donuts is, that's any parent out there knows how that works. Unfortunately, what I didn't consider was telling them about donuts before I hit record, because if you go to the unedited one, they're basically all they're doing is they're talking about, can we go get the donuts now? And I'm like, guys, am I done recording? Yeah, but I want the donuts. Like, okay. Yeah. That was funny.
That was funny.
And there's been a number of like flubs and stuff like that. And it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure. So I just wanted to thank everyone. Seriously, not only I think our goal isn't to be, I think our goal always was to inspire, but I think the thing that surprised me, I don't want to speak for Andy, was we've been inspired by you all.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I had no idea that there were that many people out there that were even doing some of the stuff that Frank and I were talking about, both business and personal. And it was just, I think inspiring is the right word. And the feedback that we get from the show is mostly positive. And when I say mostly, I mean way north of 95, 98% is positive. And the stuff that isn't positive is usually very constructive. Right. So and again, all of it is just very inspiring to us. People are listening. They're hearing stuff. A small minority are hearing stuff and going, you could do that better if you did this, which is awesome. Keep that up. But just, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We love that. We love the feedback we get. We really enjoy the feedback we get, actually. Some of the things that have come up have been like, oh yeah, that's true. So yeah, so thank you. So thank you for 2.5 wonderful years. We're kicking off season 3. We're going to come out with this and the data summits, data soup summits, and don't worry, we got plenty of content coming up.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to seeing what the next 3 seasons bring. If you caught the, hopefully we won't disappoint in season 8, like another prominent show did, which I love the Game of Thrones theme thing you did. That was fun.
Thanks, Frank. I never watched a single episode of that, and I think I have like the first 5 books on my Kindle. Never read any of them, but I know it was popular, and there's nothing against it. I didn't watch. I didn't not watch it. I don't know how to say that. I wasn't driven away by anything in the show. I just don't have time. So people were
it's just a matter of.
They're like, "How awesome this show is," and I was like, "I can't. I just can't."
Right. So what I did was I waited till season 5, and then I kind of binged season 5 when I had like 3 months of HBO for some reason. And then I kind of caught up again when we switched to other cable providers again. And
gotcha.
And then I saw the first 2 episodes of season 8, and then was kind of advised, maybe you don't waste your time with the rest of it. And I kind of caught highlight reels.
I heard really disappointing. I heard disappointment. Is probably the best way to say it.
I think it was just the people who make the show are done. I mean, the show runners had gotten a deal with Star Wars. And,
oh, cool.
The funny thing was like stuff would get like there was a Starbucks cup from one of the characters like it's set in kind of a medieval world, and there was like this Starbucks cup like right in the middle of like table. It may not have been Starbucks, but it was like Tim Hortons or something like that. Or
oh my goodness.
Because they film. I don't know if they film in Canada, Iceland. They film in a lot of interesting places, Ireland, Iceland,
Sure.
stuff like that. So whoever the local coffee chain was, that's who it was, which is funny. Attention to detail. That's the first sign. Once you lose that, that's the first sign.
Yeah. You're focusing on something different. That's for
This is
sure.
true. So speaking of focus, or the lack thereof, which is kind of what we do, we will let the nice British lady end the show.
Thanks for listening to Data Driven. Don't just listen, become a data driver by going to datadriven.tv to sign up to join the community, access to special events, tips and tricks, and more. Sign up today at datadriven.tv.